On today's Question of Faith, how do we get kids to be interested in Mass instead of Sunday sports? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I am Mike Hayes. I'm the Director of Young Adult Ministry for the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ferentz, the Vicar for Evangelization.
And I'm Francine Costantini, the Director of Youth Ministry.
Yay, Francine's back.
Welcome back, Francine.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so how do we, Francine, get kids to be interested in Mass instead of Sunday sports? Guys without kids over here are going to turn to mom, you know.
So I don't think it's an either-or.
Yeah.
It's a both and. You don't have to convince someone that, you know, sports are bad and in order for them to love and appreciate and want to go to Mass. So I think that's the starting point, is it's a both and. But Mass is part of the family. It's part of what we do. And so we have so much flexibility with Mass times as Catholics. And so if you've got a game or something, or a game that you want to play in or a game you want to watch, you can find a Mass that is at a different time that will not interfere.
I was just going to say, the number of Mass times we have, I mean, there's got to be one that fits into your schedule. Come on.
Yeah, we have 185 parishes in the diocese here in Cleveland, so if you're listening here, there's a place for you, and there's a Mass time for you. Early in the morning, late at night, afternoons, so...
And even for those travel teens, I know a lot of teams travel, and they'll be gone all weekend. Mm-hmm. There's apps for that. There's a Mass Times app. You can go on there and find where is a church near you, where you're playing, and what are the Mass times there, and figure out how to schedule around those tournament games.
It's the John Mulaney joke. What if you were out of town? They have Mass when you're out of town. Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of thing.
And then you get to go visit beautiful new churches, or even ugly new churches, and that's fine too. But you get to go to Mass in other places, and there's something really beautiful about that.
Jesus will still be present, even if your church is ugly.
Our other frequent visitor to this show, Maria Wancata, has a daughter who plays soccer. She's on a traveling soccer team, and the Wancata family makes part of their travel weekends visiting different Masses and shrines.
Do, yeah.
And I see that on her Insta account. Like, we're here this weekend, so we're visiting this church, and then a soccer post after that. So bringing those two things together, as Francine says, the both and, I think that's pretty awesome.
And if you are helping another family, because not all the families can always all go to the travel tournaments, make sure you're asking, even if it's not a religious team, find out if anybody else on the team is Catholic and see if they want to go to Mass with you too.
Yeah, that's good. I don't want to say an argument, but so one of my classmates' wives was talking about this the other day, and I said, why do they have these things so early in the morning? Messes up my Mass schedule and everything else. And I sort of quietly said, you can go to another Mass. And she was like, yeah, but Sunday's supposed to be a day of rest. It's supposed to be a Sabbath. We've lost that. How come? And I said, I like to relax by watching a ball game. And there was just dead silence, right? For like 10 seconds. She was like, well, yeah, I guess there is that. I was like, yeah, I mean, and if I had children, that's probably how I'd spend my time. It'd be like, okay, it's Sunday afternoon. Let's go to the Little League baseball game, or whatever it is. I'm sure they would be involved in something along those lines, but,
I think it's still policy in our diocese that you can't start CYO sports until after 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Correct. And I brought that up with her, and I said, well, we can't start before 1 o'clock, so it's not really getting in the way of your Mass. No, but Sunday's supposed to be a day of rest. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, yes, and some people relax by watching a sports game.
Well, some of these travel teams do go hardcore for the whole weekend, so that's a little different. And as a church, we don't have control over that, so I think we control what we can. And you're right. Like I watched the Browns game this Sunday at 11 o'clock Mass at St. Mary of the Falls and a 5 p.m. Mass at Holy Martyrs in Medina. So I called some friends who live in Brunswick who I know watch the game, and I've been doing a lot of this lately. Can I invite myself over to your house to do this? You said I can come over any time, so I'm just seeing if you're true to that. They're like, oh, yeah, come on over. So it was really fun.
I am going to my first Browns game this coming weekend.
Oh, versus the Jets.
Browns-Jets, yes. I grew up a Jets fan, actually. But I just for the record, I will root for the Browns while I am here.
As you should.
As I should is correct.
You don't get beer poured on you, yeah.
Yeah, it turns out someone I know is friends with the Browns owner, and he got me tickets.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a nice segue into my answer for this question.
Oh, yeah.
Because it eventually does have to do with the Browns. And I mentioned to you, too, before we started recording, I was pondering this last night in bed, this question. And I think it's a pretty philosophical question, and I think it can be tied in with the good. And we worked this when we were with Miguel and Terry doing the Anna Joachim workshops, because questions like this came up. And one of the things we often said to the grandparents was, always start with what's good. And so if your children or grandchildren, family members enjoy sports, ask them why they like sports so much and say, who's your favorite athlete? You know, I just listened to a podcast last night about Serena Williams, who someone said after like Muhammad Ali, maybe the best athlete of all time. You know, so what is it about these athletes that are great? What is it about sports that are great? And if you want to be an athlete, you usually have a model or a hero you look up to. And so you're recognizing some good, some excellence in that person. But then, when it comes to sports, eventually the person fades in terms of his or her ability to play sports well. So even Tom Brady now, he's a year younger than I am. I think he's 46, he's 45. He retired and then he came out of retirement. But eventually Tom Brady will not be able to play football anymore.
Correct.
And other people will be better than him. And even Serena got beat by a younger person who even said, Serena's my hero, but it's her time now, right? So that good of athleticism eventually fades, and that can be an in to start talking about, well, what's a good that lasts? And what does it mean? Okay, so I know what this means to be a good football player, a good volleyball player, a good tennis player. What does it mean to be a good human being? What does it mean to live well? And that's a bigger, broader, philosophical, theological question, and that's when we can talk about how Mass helps us become better human beings. And so maybe, and again, this gets back to the grandparents' workshop business, if we've had people in our lives who are older and even elderly and sickly who can't do a lot in terms of physical stuff, like my dad at one point in his life was really athletic, and near the end of his life, he ran out of breath because his heart was in such bad shape, walking 100 feet at the nursing home. But for him, that was something. But he still had great good about him and great dignity. And so I think when we can start talking about the good of the human person and what it means to be virtuous, what it means to be holy, and say, because this athletic stuff it's important, but there are higher goods. There's greater goods than that, and to engage in those sorts of discussions. So what about an athlete who was only an athlete and then was kind of a jerk later on in life?
Yeah.
Or someone who's like a Bernie Kosar, who's still really active in the community and active on Twitter, the former Browns quarterback, who, when he was the Browns quarterback, I don't know if you know this, he bought the air conditioning at your parish, Mike, at St. Christopher's. So, and then I started this because you mentioned the Browns. I'm thinking of the whole Deshaun Watson business right now. So, okay, he's an outstanding football player, but obviously there's more to life than being a football player, because you can get in trouble too, morally, for making poor decisions. And so I think our faith gives us this space to talk about these different types of good and higher goods and lower goods, and that athletics, it's a good. Sports are a good, but they're not going to bring us complete happiness, because even champions get sad and get depressed and get lonely and their hearts ache. And that's where Jesus comes in, and that's where Mass comes in. And even when it comes to sickness and death, a lot of times that's the turnaround for people. But I think young people often don't think of that. Like, I'm healthy, I play sports, I don't need church. Okay, one day you will, something like that.
Right.
And there's also, St. Paul is great at using sports analogies to talk about the faith. And I talk to young people all the time about the fact that, you put effort in things that matter, and you suffer for things that matter. And athleticism, you suffer to be a good athlete, and you strive to be a good athlete, and there's work involved because you find that to be a good thing. And the faith involves striving, and there's work involved, and you've got to put time in, and relationships involve work. And so how are you putting time into your relationships with others, but also into your relationship with God?
And glorifying God by the way you play your sport. I see this weekend when Cade York hit that, was it 59-yard field goal?
58, I believe.
58. Okay, whatever it was one yard longer than Phil Dawson's longest kick for the Browns. And this guy's 21 years old. But in the post-game presser, he said it was a blessing, and I thank God for it. And I noticed on one of his biceps, he does have a cross there. So he's a Christian, and this guy has worked his faith and athletics together. As you said, it's not a either or. They're not mutually exclusive. It's a both and. And a lot of these athletes are devout,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many athletes do we see make the sign of the cross before they get up to bat in a ball game? It's going to happen a lot, whether they win or lose, by the way. They still make the sign of the cross. The other thing, too, what you said before is, we're more than our achievements, right?
Yes.
There's going to be a day that, things are going to fade. You're not going to be able to do some of the things that you used to be able to do, and we're more in our achievement, but we're also more than our sins, right?
Correct.
So even the bad things that we do, you brought up Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
We say this all the time. The people who have committed some of the worst sins that we've ever known, they're more than those sins.
Correct.
Right.
And so we have to think of that on the same level. It's like, they're not just a murderer. They're not just, my friends who do prison ministry talk about this all the time. They're not just those acts that they did. They're more than that.
That's not your identity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't change what you've done, obviously. You still need to be penitent for those things, and we still need to work through reconciliation. But you're not only those things.
Correct.
Yeah.
I had something else to say, and now I'm just pondering God's mercy, which is a good thing to do. Oh, it was that on the Hallow app, that kicker for the Chiefs is doing some new...
Butker, yes.
Is that his name? He's doing
Harrison
some
Butker.
sort... I haven't listened to it yet, but
Who got hurt this week, yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, his plant leg, he turned it when he was kicking, and he went out there and still kicked a field goal with it and then limped his way off to the sideline. It was very inspiring, I have to say.
Yeah, so he's pretty public about his Catholic faith. So even showing heroes to young people, I think that can be helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was good, yeah.
Well, I'll do a little personal confession about sports and faith. So my junior year of high school, I went to Holy Name. I played baseball there, and I was pretty good. And I think I batted .386 my junior year with one home run. I was a line drive hitter. But then that summer, I adjusted my swing to my detriment, and I batted very poorly the next year, kind of like what most catchers do, with a little under 200. And I was saddened by that, but it also made me consider what I said at the earlier part of the show. There's more to life than baseball here. So what? And I already had faith in God. So I'm like, what are you leading me to? And I even think through that, what I was putting so much of my effort into, and it didn't fill me up the way that I thought it would. That did get me thinking, then what will? And it was at the end of playing summer league that summer that I made the decision to go to the seminary. So it's weird how God works, even through, like, he works through your loves and your desires. If you're open, he'll keep directing you. So he doesn't work apart from those, but through those,
Yeah, our lives are often paralleled. So I played also baseball in high school. I was not as good as you are. I got up 7 times in my high school career. Like, if you ask me what position I played, I would say end. They were like, end? There's no end in baseball. I was like, yes, end of the bench. So the last guy was kind of like the last guy on the team. Honestly, I was on the team because I knew how to keep score. They needed someone to know how to keep the scorebook, and I knew how to do it. And so they said, okay, we'll give you a spot on the team. Just keep that scorebook and go coach first base.
And then you've got community.
And then, correct. And then, and the other thing, too, I grew up in the inner city, which is, kind of hard, and those guys had my back, so that was good. But yeah, so I kind of learned those lessons, like, life's about more in baseball real quick. But at the same time, I went into the sports field as a career and learned that there as well. It was like, so I'm part of the media, and you got to ask questions of athletes that are pretty difficult for them some days, and I could see that wear on some of the guys every once in a while. And I started realizing that I'm caring more about these athletes as people than I am as subjects, and said, maybe life's about more than this. I can remember even using those words to my then spiritual director. I said, I thought life was going to be about more than this. And I was like, well, it is. I was like, well, thank you, Captain Obvious. It's like snotty spiritual director question number 1 is this. But yeah, and so I started thinking, the time that I'm spending in my parish doing retreats for young adults, the time I'm spending with people who just ask me questions. I said those are times that I really am cherishing more than this career that I've built. And so it's the same kind of thing.
And isn't it funny, too, how in sports and in life you often learn more from your losses than your victories?
Yeah, that's right. All the time.
And so if you do it right, people who suffer, if they enter in that Paschal mystery with the Lord, like they're more mature than those who haven't, who have had it really easy. And that's true about sports, too. Like Michael Jordan was cut from his sophomore high school basketball team. I mean, that's nuts. Or you look at LeBron James' childhood growing up, not knowing his father and living with coaches and all these kind of things. Like hardship can bring about great good. Not that we're searching it out, but suffering comes. It's part of life, and that's part of sports too. And you work through it. You see the parallels there between sports and spirituality, and maybe this is the answer. Like connect sports and spirituality. Maybe that's another podcast that someone should do. Someone probably already has something like that.
Yeah,
but we're doing it now.
Yeah, that's right. We'll give you an episode.
Francine, you're more of an artist than an athlete, or what?
I am not. I'm neither. I'm just me. I don't have a whole lot
You're cool.
I don't have a whole lot of skills like that, either athletic nor artistic. But
What did you do for extracurriculars in high school?
I read a lot.
Oh, you're a nerd.
I'm a nerd.
Yes.
I love to downhill ski and I love to scuba dive.
Oh.
But even those things I haven't done in
Canadian.
many years.
Cool. Speaking of Canadian, I don't know if I told you this. I watched a Shania Twain documentary on
Did you really?
Netflix. She's awesome.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half. Let's go, girls. What?
Speaking of sports and Netflix, Ted Lasso won a couple more Emmys last night. I watched that for a little while.
Is that on Netflix? I thought you said it was on HBO.
It's on Apple
Yeah,
TV.
see, I don't have it. I want to watch that too.
I'll give you my password. You can watch
Okay.
it. It's good. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fun show. And Brett Goldstein won again for Best Supporting Actors. Who plays the sort of gruff and guy who's on the team on his last legs, but he's like the
soccer?
veteran on the team. Yeah, it's soccer. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not soccer, it's football.
That's right.
Whatever.
Football is life. If you watch the show, you actually get that joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought we were just talking that football wasn't
That's
life.
correct.
Jesus is the way, the truth, and life.
And speaking of Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life, let's talk a little bit about church. Francine's brought one with her this week.
Our Lady of Guadaulpe is near my home parish, and so it's in Macedonia, and my husband was assigned there for a year through diaconate formation, and really, really enjoyed that time. Father Kevin Shemaga is his spiritual director, who's the pastor there, and there's just an openness and a welcoming to that community.
I've only been to that parish once, but I do know, tying in with the theme of this show, Father Shemaga, I think, played minor league baseball.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Do you remember what organization?
I don't know. I think it was a shortstop.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him in here one day and talk about that. That'll be nice. Yeah, well, that's probably an interesting journey to the priesthood. When you think
I
about
bet.
it, right?
Yeah.
We have some other things going on around the diocese that I thought we'd talk about today. Theology on Tap is coming up. That'll be the third Tuesday of every month, starting this month. And Father Damian and I will be interviewing Bishop Malesic for Theology on Tap at not St. Wendlan's, down the street from St. Wendlan's. At
In the
Forest
parish
Street
boundaries, yes.
At Forest
Actually, they
Street
don't have a
Brewery.
parish boundary because they're nationality parish. But
That's
yes,
right, yeah.
just north of the parish.
At Forest City Brewery, which is right down there in that Duck Island area. So that'd be nice.
Freeman and West 25th. No, Freeman and Columbus.
I put together a little listener survey that we will put in the show notes to ask you how you're enjoying the podcast, and fill that out for us. That'll be great. And we'll even figure out a little prize for a random drawing of some sort. We'll talk about that in the next podcast.
It's fun.
Yeah. Our first young adult retreat is coming up October 14 to 16, and that'll be at the Jesuit Retreat Center, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. Early registrations. Hey, check out our new logo. Yeah. Kayla Gill upstairs put together a new logo for us, so we just put that in it's already on our
I noticed.
I
I
just
thought we were
saw
going to
it.
wait, and I'm like, whoa, the neon font looks really sweet.
I liked it too much. I said I got to put this up.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks sharp.
Yes.
And we are taking reservations for World Youth Day, which is going to be in Portugal this year. We're also going to walk the Portuguese Camino. Woohoo! Getting in shape, starting to do my walking. Edgewater Park's real nice.
It's great.
It's going to be fun. So we'll take that. It's an $800 deposit holds your space. We're extending that deadline. We had an early fall deadline, which we're now extending a little bit more. Our Franciscan Spiriteurs who we're working with, they're headed to Portugal next month. So I said, we can wait a little while because we got to go and figure out what they're going to ask us for. And then you have a Cleveland 21-6 is still coming up, right? Are you still taking reservations for that?
CLE 21-6 is our diocesan youth conference for high school teens, and tickets are on sale now through November 15th. The actual conference is on January 7th. And it's a Saturday all day at John Carroll University. So this is not something that you can buy an individual ticket for. It is rather something that a group buys tickets for their group. So parishes or Catholic high schools can get a group together to bring to the conference. We're really excited.
Right. So get your act together and get on that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And then our gospel this week is from Luke's gospel. If therefore you are not trustworthy with dishonest wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? If you are not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? No servant can serve two masters. You will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon. Ooh.
The parable itself is one of the most confusing because the Lord's praising some guy for his dishonesty.
Yeah.
But the point is, this seems to me, that look how creative people can be when they get in trouble to get out of it.
Yep.
Use that kind of creativity when it comes to your faith and evangelizing and bringing it to others, because oftentimes we don't. Think of how sly and cunning people can be when they want to cheat and steal. And then how about when it comes to the gospel? Why can't we use that same ingenuity, our reason, our intelligence, and be creative in our efforts?
In a different gospel passage, Jesus often says, to be as cunning as snakes or sly as foxes or things like that.
Yeah.
My spiritual director used to point that out to me all the time if I beat myself up for something. He would say, no, you were being shrewd there. That's good.
You need to be shrewd in evangelization.
Yeah, he said, you weren't doing this for an evil purpose. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, maybe you're right. Yeah.
I have the TV Mass this weekend at 10 a.m. on the CW, and we pre-record it. And the story I used in the homily was that when I was in high school, I wasn't always a good student, just getting enough to get by to play sports. And if I had a test or something I wasn't prepared for, I'd go down to the third floor bathroom and I'd hit the button to the hand dryer, and I'd unbutton my shirt and I'd get myself really hot, and then I'd rub my cheeks and go down to the clinic and be like, I don't feel well, and then I get sent home. Whoo! But that was me being cunning for the wrong thing. But why couldn't I use that kind of creativity and ingenuity to do good, And I think that may be at the point of the gospel this weekend.
I'm picturing a young you doing this.
Oh,
That's making me laugh.
Yeah.
And no one ever caught on, huh?
No, I didn't do it often, because you have to
right.
be smart. You can't be pulling that stuff all the time.
I was just talking with someone
I've confessed these sins, by the way. Go ahead.
Good.
who was complaining, you can't take the COVID test and put it up against a light bulb to get a positive COVID test to get out of school. And I'm like, nope, no, you cannot.
Nope, well, it's not going to work. And so all that has been good. So, Francine, thanks for joining us today. And, hopefully we'll all learn a little bit more about how to get people to Mass in addition to their Sunday sports.
Yes.
And, look at our show notes for all the things that we talked about this week. We'll have that and a whole bunch more next time on Question of Faith.